I'm Carol Smith. Welcome to View and Do Video Craft Classroom number 24, Bible School Projects for Kids. We have a number of projects to show you today, step-by-step instructions, and they satisfy the things that you as a teacher are looking for. They're easy, they're fun, they're inexpensive, and each one has a little message. Now, let's get started. Our first project is the He is Risen cross, and it resembles stained glass, but it's so easy to make. The first step is to get pieces of poster board that are 9 by 12 inches, or a little smaller. You can adjust the size of this to fit available materials. Now you're going to want to make a pattern for the kids to trace around because that'll make it go faster. And our pattern is 10 inches high, 6 inches is this dimension, and it's 1 1/4 inches wide. And we've already cut ours out so that when your students get ready to trace it, they just center it and then trace with a pencil. You're going to cover these lines up so they can not be afraid of making it dark. They want to be able to see it. Now the stained glass is made with construction paper, and we have 6 colors: orange, yellow, pink, green, blue, and red. And you're just going to allow the students to cut up the pieces, and they just do them random. There's no pattern to it. You want to make each one of them about the size of a dime. And so you can make them just different shapes. And if you think there's one that's too big, you can cut that one down. So as you can see, you just cut random shapes. And I have a bunch that are already cut over here, so we'll just add these to the pile and we'll go to the next step. And you want to have, you might give each child one piece and let them all cut them up and then group them together and combine them. Or you can give each child a number of colors and let them cut their own. Now we're going to use the Founder's Craft adhesive, and we're going to place it on the cross and just start gluing it on. Now I've put a hole in this. Just poke a hole in it. Now I'm going to put a little bit on my cross. You don't want to go too far because the glue would dry, and then we just want to randomly stick on some colors. Now there's going to be holes between them, but that's okay because we're going to fill it in with the black. And leave some space between each one. Kids could probably do a better job of this than adults. Adults get too precise about things sometimes. Let's see, let's do an orange one. Now if you've got a little piece or a little hole that looks too big, you can cut one, or you can just put that in. We can cut that part off the bottom with the scissors when it dries. Now let's put some more glue on. Also can cut them if they don't quite fit. There, fits in there better. Let's put a yellow one here. And a green. Let's cut this blue one off the bottom here. Now let's add a little more glue. Now you may want to do this part at the beginning of the lesson and let the glue dry a little bit, I'm going to show you what to do next. Because there's some little drying steps in here to be done. Now, after you get this all covered, all 4 directions, then you will take and let the glue dry a little bit, as I said, and then take the Mod Podge mat. You can use a foam paintbrush or an inexpensive craft brush and just brush on a light coat. This will kind of glue the edges down and make it a little more solid for us to do our leading. So let's just, I can show you that part. All they'll do is just put on a little bit and brush on a light coat over the part that they've glued on. So you'll continue and finish the cross, and then we'll be ready for the next step. Now we have completed gluing our construction paper pieces down, and we brushed on the Mod Podge and let it dry. Now the next step we're going to do is to write the scripture verse on the bottom. That way when the students do their dimensional painting, they'll be through with it. So let me turn it around here, and we're going to write, "He is risen," and you may want to have them draw this on first with a pencil. And we'll put the verse, it's Matthew 28:6. Okay, now we're ready to do the dimensional outlining, and we're going to use the Fashion Show Sequin Black paint, and we're going to make a hole. Now you will want to do this for your students. You'll want to take all the bottles and do it at the same time. We use a paper clip and get a mitt, put the paper clip in the mitt, and we use a lighter to heat the end. We want to burn a nice round hole in it. Okay, now we'll put the lid back on it and tamp it down, and we're ready to begin. Now we're just going to slide the tip on the paper. You might make the suggestion to the kids that they put the heel of their hand down on the paper and slide it along, and also start away from them. In other words, not down here, have them start on the other end. And you just fill it in. You can hold it up too to fill in those holes. Now also you may want to have them use a paper towel to wipe the tip from time to time, because when they fill in a big area, they'll want to be sure that it doesn't have paint on it, and so they smear it onto their construction paper. You want to be sure you cover the edges of the construction paper so that there's no white showing through. Now we've outlined all the parts and we want to put on our gold lines coming out from the cross, and we're going to use the Fashion Show Gold Glitter Paint, and I already have a hole in this one. Now you can have them draw them on with the ruler or they can just freehand them. Now they can just let that dry and it'll be ready to take home and put up on in their room on the wall. Our next project is a wearable that you can do on small white t-shirts. You want to be sure that you pre-wash them before you come to the class. And this is a 2-day project. You will do the base painting first and then the outlining the next day. Now, we're going to be using a stencil to put on our design, and we want to position the stencil about 3 inches down from the neck and roughly center it. Now, we've got some other things on our stencil and we want to tape those off, so we just use a masking or a drafting tape and cover those areas. This also helps tape down our stencil. Now, we're not going to stencil the sun in this location, so I'm also going to put some tape over it. It also protects it from your red paint that you're painting the sail with. Now, we're going to be using 4 colors to stencil with, and the first color we're going to use is the blue. This is hot blue. It's one of the neon colors in the Fashion Show soft paint, and we're going to just make a pool of it. Now, we're going to use a minimal amount of paint here, and we're going to use a form of dry brushing. So we just want to hold the brush straight up and dip it in a little bit of the paint. Now we kind of pull it over to the side and blot it. We just want to wet the very bottom bristles here. And then we want to blot it a little bit on a paper towel like this, because we don't want there to be too much paint. It might run under the stencil. Now we're just going to do a pouncing motion or a stippling motion over the edges of the stencil. It might be a good idea to have them tape off under that also, because that's a little close. It depends on the age of the child. Now let's reload the brush. You just pull it over. Now you want to pull the paint out, don't just stick it right down. That maybe was a little bit too big of a pool. And again, we blot it 2 or 3 times and then continue. This also almost gives you a marble effect. Now, if you don't have stencil brushes, you can use just economy sponges and cut them into little pieces and use a sponge to do this. The one thing about it, you do have to have a different brush or a different sponge for each color. So now let's do the red. This is hot red. It's a neon color in the Fashion Show soft paint. You'll notice that I'm holding my brush straight up and I'm not letting it slide under the edges of my stencil. I'm using my left hand to hold it down. Now you want to demonstrate this to the kids so that they get a good result the first time. They're proud of their little projects they make. You also control the depth of color by the pressure. Have them start off with a light pressure and then come in with a darker, or more pressure to get it darker. You can always put on more paint if it's too light. Now we're going to use the green on the bottom of the boat. It's a good idea to shake these before you spread them out. I'm using 3/8 inch stencil brushes because they're just perfect for this shape and this size of opening. Now that completes our colors on the boat. So we're going to put that one down and pull this up. Now look how nice. See, stenciling gives you nice crisp edges to your design. And let's take the tape off of the sun. And we'll place the sun where we want it to be, which will be just up a little higher. We want it to be up on the shoulder. And we'll put the tape back down over the sail. And press it down so that protects it while we're doing our hot yellow. Have a little smaller brush for this one, because our openings are a little smaller here. Now, so that it will match your other, you don't want to paint it solid. You want to leave a little bit of the white shirt showing through in places. Now our painting is complete, and let's look at it. Look how nice it looks. Now we just want to let it dry for at least 24 hours and then heat set it using the directions on the labels. Now we're ready to do our second step, which is outlining. We've used the iron to heat set all the shirts, and this is something that the teacher should do. I wouldn't recommend this as a class activity. Now we want to outline with the Fashion Show dimensional paints, and the first thing we're going to do is to make holes in all the bottles, and this again the teacher should do. You want to use a paper clip and a lighter, and we just heat the end. And make a hole in the end. Now this makes a nice round hole so the kids will be able to do a neat job. And we want to make sure that it's flowing. And we'll be ready to begin. But we're going to start with one of the other colors. Let's start with blue, and we're going to put the waves in. I've already made holes in these bottles. Now, depending on the age of the child, you may want to draw in the waves for the child, or if they're an older child, they can do their own. And we'll just start and go across and make a solid line. I'm going to make sure our paint's down in our tip. And we want to bring some out on this side of the boat and some on this side. Now we want to do the green next, or I'm going to do the green next because I want to start on that end and come up. Now the green is a finer line, and we want to make a fine line tip. And we're going to use 3/4 inch cellophane tape, about a 4-inch piece. Now I already have a hole in my bottle, so I'm going to stand the tape up, straight up, and put it about 1/4 inch up from the base of the tip. And I'm going to just wind it around. Now I want to use my fingers to tightly adhere it to itself as I turn it in my left hand. And this gives me a cone. Now notice that as I am adhering the tape to itself, the tape is reversing direction and reinforcing itself coming down. And we just push that little part down. That makes it a removable fine line tip. And this is a little bit finer than I want, so I'm just going to cut the end off a little bit because I can have any size hole that I want. Now we're going to just outline, and we want to lay the bottle over almost down horizontally rather than holding it up vertically, because then you would smush your tip. Now the fine line tip gives us better control. Also would be easier for children to use. Now we want to use the blue, and we'll make a fine line tip for that one. Now these are fast to put on. You might want to put them on for them or teach the children to make them themselves, because it just takes a second to wind one around. And now the red. Now at this point you can do some personalizing. The child can put their name on the sail, or we have penciled in the letters VBS. You might want to make this so that all the children would have one to match, and you just trace on the pencil markings. Now we want to outline the sun. Now I'm doing this pretty fast, but this is a good activity. It will take the kids a little more time to do this. Because in Vacation Bible School, you want projects that they can work on for several days and be entertained. We'll outline the sun. And that'll be it. Now you could have them all alike, or if the children are a little older, you can give them permission to do their own designs. But there it is. It's nice, and any child would be proud to wear this. Our next project is this cute little teddy bear, and believe it or not, it's a puzzle. Now it's made with 11 jumbo craft sticks, and the first thing we want to do is to turn them over and have the child put their name on the back, because after they separate and make it into a puzzle, they might all get mixed up and then it would be hard to separate them. So have them write their name on them first. Then we want to tape them together using long pieces of masking tape. This is going to hold them together while we stencil the design on the front. Now you want to push the edges together so that they're flush. And we'll just cut the pieces off, the extra pieces. And we're ready to do our stenciling. We're going to use Bears and Balloons, the Simply Stencil, and Apple Barrel acrylic paint. And our stencil brushes are 3/8 of an inch wide. We're going to place our stencil over the sticks, center it, and we'll tape it down. Now, we can't tape because the stencil is bigger than our sticks, so we're going to tape through the balloons because we're going to do those a different color anyway. So we'll tape those while we're stenciling our bear. And that'll hold that down. Now we're going to use the dry brush method, especially because it's on a firm surface. The harder the surface, the drier brush you need to stencil with. So we're just dipping the tip of the stencil bristles into the paint, and then we're going to get it off the sides and then blot it. And we just use kind of a circular motion to blot the paint so that there's not so much paint in it, because we don't want it to run under the edge of the stencil. Then we just, if you'll have them start with light pressure, then they won't get too much paint. Then they can always make it darker. Now I'm going in a circular motion so that we get a nice smooth print. And we go on the outside of the stencil opening. We don't just start in the center. That gives you too dark a print on the outside. Now I picked up a little bit of stencil off of my first, where I blotted my brush there, a little bit more paint. Now this is giving us a nice clear print, see? If you got too much paint, it would run under your stencil. So again, we want to clean it off the edges a little bit and blot it so that we don't get too much. Also, you need to use your left hand to hold it down because we don't have any tape on that side. Now we can make the bear's tummy a little lighter in the middle just by brushing there last. We start around the outsides and leave it a little lighter in the center, and that shades his tummy. Now every time we load our brush, we want to make some little blotting marks on our paper towel. So each child needs to have a paper towel when they start doing their stenciling. And we also can leave his head a little lighter in the center for a highlight. Now I've got enough paint on my paper towel there to do his arm and his hand. Now we're going to highlight the strings of the balloons with black, so I didn't tape those out because it's okay if they get some paint there. That'll kind of mark where they are going to be when we get ready to use our marker. Now let's look and see what it looks like. Looks very nice. These are just some little loose brush bristles. We'll dust that off and we're ready to reposition our tape and get ready to do our pink balloon. So we want to peel the tape back off of that side. We can reveal that one. We can leave it over the blue side. I'll just cut it off. Now we can, our stencil paint dries very quickly, so we can just put another piece of tape over it. It's already dry. We might want to put another piece up here so we don't get any pink onto the blue balloon. And this is a apple barrel pink. This is rose bouquet. And this one is nutmeg brown. I don't think I told you what color that was. Now again, we want to blot the brush because on a hard surface we don't want to get too much paint. And again, we can go first around the outside edges, leaving the center till last because our brush has less paint on it when you get to the center. That gives you a little highlight in the center of the balloon. Now it's okay if they want to paint them solid. This one is painted solid. I'm just showing you a way. For older children, they like to shade a little bit because it's a little more artistic. Well, I'm having a little trouble getting the paint off of my blue balloon. There we go. Now we want to be sure that the stencil is properly placed, and then we'll just tape across the pink balloon. The nice thing about stenciling is it dries so quickly that you can go on to the next color. Now we're going to do the blue one, and we're using blue stoneware. Whoops. We just want to get paint on the bottoms of the bristles. Blot our brush and start around the edges of the opening. And then brush across the middle, leaving a highlight in the center. And that's it. That's a very quick way to put a design on it. Now we take that off and we want to let our stencil paint thoroughly dry before we do our outlining. That will be our next step. Now our next step is to outline, and for that we're going to use a permanent marker. Make sure it's permanent, and we're just going to go around the stenciling. Now don't draw in the eyes because we're going to add wiggly eyes for that. Now you want to color in his strings. As I told you when we stenciled, you can go ahead and mark them because then we can color them in with the marker. Now we'll outline the hearts. Now I'm going to have to turn it to write on it. Write Jesus. Right, loves me on the blue one. For younger children, you might want to pencil the lettering in before they trace it. And now we're going to let that dry, and we're going to use matte Mod Podge to put a coating on it. Let's just get a piece of paper towel to put that on. We won't squirt it directly on our project. Never hurts to take a little precaution. Now you can brush it on with a foam paintbrush. And we're going to brush two coats. You want to brush with the grain. This makes the top of the puzzle a little smoother to their hands as they're playing with it. Gives it a good sealer coat. Now I want you to let this one dry. It will take about 15 minutes, and then you can add another coat to it of the same thing, the Mod Podge matte, and let that one dry, and then we're going to do step 3. Now the Mod Podge is dry, and we're ready to do the last step, and that's to glue on the bow and the eyes. Let's do the eyes first. We're using the Founders Craft adhesive. Just put a small dot on, and we'll put the bow, a small dot on for the bow. And these are wiggly eyes, but if you can't afford these, of course, you could draw on the eyes. But these make it really cute. And then we put the bow on, and I tied this one. This is a 5-inch piece of pink satin ribbon, 1/4 inch. Just press it down. And that's all there is to it. You let that dry until it's on there firmly, and then you're ready to give it to the child, and they can take it home and Look at this. Now it's a puzzle. They separate the pieces, mix them up, and it's ready to put together with their Bible verse on it. Our next project is a little gift that your kids can make for someone in a nursing home. In fact, they can make them and take them as a group down to the nursing home and hang them on the doorknobs. You can put little gifts in them like cosmetics, candy, cookies. They go real fast, but they are a 2-day project. So you want to do part of it and then finish it up the next day. Now the first thing we're going to do is to make our lace stiff, the lace that's around here, and we're going to use Stiffy for that. And we're just going to pour some into our plate. Now several children can use the same plate, but we just put it in. This is a 12-inch strip of 2.5-inch wide pre-gathered lace. Now let's turn it over. You want to get it completely wet. Now let's just strip off the excess. And then we'll put it on wax paper to dry. Now I'm going to put that over to the side and wipe my hands, and we'll do the next step. Now these 2 steps can be done at the same time. Now we want to take a cup. Now this is a paper cup like you buy for a party, and they come in beautiful colors, and we're going to draw a flower on it. We'll just kind of make a circle in the center, and then we'll draw a 5-petal flower around it. Since we're going to cover it up, I'll make this one a little bigger. And then we're going to have 2 leaves. They don't have to draw on the leaves if they don't want to. They can just freehand those. Now we're going to paint those with dimensional paint. We're going to use the Fashion Show glitter paints for the petals. And let's just make a hole in that. Now you'll want to make holes in all the bottles for your students. And we use a lighter, and we just heat a paper clip. Now you burn a hole so that it'll be nice and round. Make sure the paint will come out of all the bottles. And now we'll just draw that on. We'll put the blue on first because we have more of it. Now I outline it and then fill it in, and I use my tip to spread the paint around, because you want a nice thick coating. And they'll want to hold their cup horizontally. If they do it vertically, it'll slide off because the cup is a pretty slippery surface. This is the Blue Ocean glitter paint. It's a beautiful color. Now it looks a little white now, but when it dries it'll be glittery like the sample. Now see, you cover up any of the pencil lines that were irregular. Now after you get that one on, I already have holes in these bottles. And let me turn this around. Use my pencil so it won't roll. And we will just squeeze on the leaves. Now again, you use the tip as a tool to smooth it out. But you don't want to go all the way down to the cup. You just want to float the tip on top of the paint. Also, if they need to adjust their paint, they can use a toothpick to bring it out. In fact, I'll use my paper clip here to show you how you can just pull it like this. Just work the paint a little bit till it's shaped like you want it to be. And now let's put a yellow dot in the center. This is lemon yellow shiny paint. And we'll just kind of pile it up in the center. Now at this point you will need to let it dry until the next session or the next day. The next step will not take very long to complete. Now our flower is dry and look how pretty it looks. And now we're going to put holes in the cup. We want to turn the cup so that we have it spaced on both sides of the flower, and we want to make 2 dots about 3/4 of an inch apart and about a 1/2 inch down from the lid. You want to put them directly across from each other. And we're going to use a hole punch to make the hole in there. Now we have 1/2 inch satin ribbon in 2 colors, and we have a 1/2 yard, 18 inches, and I have tied a knot in one end. And we're going to start and thread the unknotted end through from the inside, and then pull it over, and we want to reverse the hole. So if we put it in the front hole on this one, we want to put it through from the outside and put it in the back hole of this one and tie a knot in it. Now the blue one, we will reverse them. Put it through from the outside and tie a knot. Make sure that your strings are about the same length. Now this might pull out if we didn't glue it, so we're going to use our Founder's glue, and we're going to put a dot of glue down underneath the knot to glue the ends of the ribbon down. Now we want to put, of course the lace will hold it down firmly. Now we want to put a bead of glue around the inside edge of the cup. And take our lace. Now this is the stiffened lace we made in the first step, and we would just want to stick it inside the cup. And depending on the size of your cup, you may have a little bit left. Now if you'll stick your hand inside, you can press it against the rim of the cup, and that holds everything down. Now you would want to let this dry, and the last thing you'll want to do then is to put a square of a colored tissue inside. And it takes a piece about 18 inches square. I'm not going to put it in there because mine is still wet. And you can put tea bags or candy or cosmetic items. And as I said, this is a gift of sharing, and it's a good experience for them to take them to the nursing home as a group. It makes a nice little reminder that people elsewhere love them. Our next project is called Bible Verse Hearts, and this is an excellent project to do for a whole week. You can start and divide the work up, and they can put their memory verse on each heart as all the days of the week. So let's start, and we bought unpainted hearts at the store, and we're going to paint them with some Stoneware Blue Apple Barrel. We can just squirt it on. Be sure that they use wax paper under their hearts. And you want to paint it on both sides. It dries very quickly. What they might do is paint all the tops. And the bottoms and then the edges. So you want to completely paint all the hearts and get those ready first and let those dry. I'm not going to finish this because this is an easy step and you know how to do this. Now after they're dry, you'll want to use the Mod Podge matte and put a coating of that on over the top of the blue. And if you wash your brush out, by the time your blue is dry enough, your brushes will be ready and you can use that for the Mod Podge. And I have some that are already prepared. The reason we put the Mod Podge on them is to seal them a little bit so that when they do their writing, there's a nice smooth surface. So let me get this out of the way and we'll do the next step. Now I have already put Bible verses on 3 of mine, but I saved one to show you. You just use a permanent marker. And we're going to put the last verse on, which is, "The Lord is good to all." Now, you can let the kids freehand this. Or you can write it on with a pencil for them if they're younger children. And that's Psalms 145:9. Now we're ready to do the dimensional painting on them. And we're going to use the Fashion Show glitter paint. This is the rose color. And we're going to make a hole in the bottle. We use a paper clip that's straightened out. We use a paper towel as a mitt. Take off the black cap. Heat the paper clip. And burn a nice round hole. Now we want to squirt it up to make sure that it's not clogged. And then we're going to make a fine line tip because we've done some fine line work on these hearts. And to do that, we're going to take a 3.5 to 4 inch piece of 3/4 inch cellophane tape, and we hold it straight up and place it about 1/4 inch up from the base of the nozzle. Now, as I hold it in my left hand, I'm going to use my right hand to tightly adhere the tape to the nozzle, especially up at the end. And I support the tape as it wraps around. Now, as it forms a cone, I'm going to move my fingers upward so that I support the cone on top of the tip as it wraps around. And I'm keeping this very tight here with the back of my index finger. As it goes around, then we're going to have a little bit left, and that's a pull-off tab because this is a disposable tip. Now, this gives us a nice size, but for glitter paint, we may want to just trim off about a 32nd of an inch to give us a little bit larger hole. Now, first we want to shake it down into the new tip and make sure that it's coming out the amount that we want it to be. That's a nice size bead. Now, the first one we're going to decorate is the one that says, "We are children of God." And we can put the dots, we're just going to put little dots all the way around it. The children don't have to draw these dots on, they're easy to freehand. Now the paint looks white, but it's going to dry and be glittery just like that paint, because it's in a transparent base, but it's white now. Now we'll do the second one with the glitter on it, and that's the last one that we did, this one. And we're just going to make little squiggles on this one. We want to make them a little different. These are sort of little S's. Now we'll let that one dry and we'll put a tape tip on the white and do those. Now, I already have a hole in this one. I didn't go through the explanation there, but you can see how fast it is to put them on. And now we'll do the God is Love first, and we'll just do a zigzag pattern around here. And we'll do a little bit of a scallop on this one. We'll shake the paint back down to keep the paint in the tip. That makes it easier to squeeze out. Now you'll just let these completely dry, and then we'll glue them onto the ribbon in the next step. Now we're ready to assemble our Bible verse hearts, and we want to get 24 inches of 1.5 inch wide grosgrain ribbon. And we've got two colors, a blue and a pink. Now you want to turn down the end of the blue one about 1 inch, and we'll just put a little dot of a Founder's glue there to hold that down. And I've cut the bottom of the ribbon into a notched edge. And now I've tied the pink one into a bow. I already have mine tied. We're just going to put a big dot there to hold the bow on. And then we want to place our hearts. And let me give you a little tip. You may want to put them in place first, or the children especially, and mark them so that they'll be an equal distance. Our hearts are a little bigger than this one, and our ribbon is a little different color, which is good because when you're donating materials, a lot of times in church the members will donate materials, and what we're teaching you is basic so that you can adapt your materials. Now we'll just want to mark, say, the top of each one. And then we'll take them off and put a dot of glue so that each one will be glued on. But that's bigger than a dot. Now I've got my marks on there, so I can just place them back. See, I want this one next. And this one. And this one. Now you press them down. Give them a second. You may need to scoot them up a little bit if the spacing doesn't look quite right. And now we can put a flower in the center of each one using our rose glitter paint and our emerald green jewel paint. And I already have tape tips on these, and I'm just going to make 4 little dots. And then use the tip to pull them together. Then I'm going to take my green and put a dot in the center. And a dot on both sides. And I'll just use the tip to pull it out into a leaf shape. These are free-form flowers that the kids can learn to make, and they can decorate their wearables with them also. Just a little free-form flower. Now when that dries, it's going to look just like this one. Now I hope you'd have enjoyed our tape today. What we've tried to do is show you some basic craft techniques so that you can adapt. If you can't use the projects exactly as we have done them, you can adapt the techniques and use materials that, as I said, have been donated by church members. Thank you.